Welcome to Module 6, IPv6 Security. In the first lesson of this module, you will learn about first-hop security in IPv6. There are a growing number of large-scale IPv6 deployments occurring within enterprise, university, and government networks. For these networks to succeed, it is important that the IPv6 deployments are secure. An important security aspect to consider is the local links, Layer 2. Traditional Layer 2 security differs between IPv4 and IPv6 because of the functionality in Layer 2 operations. This lesson identifies the IPv6 first-hop security concerns associated with router discovery, neighbor discovery, and DHCPv6. Each concern has a dedicated section that summarizes the threat and provides figures to help illustrate the steps involved in an attack. Mitigations are beyond the scope of this course. This lesson also explores IPv6 access control lists, with configuration examples in a lab exercise using the common topology. Router discovery is a means for hosts to locate routers that reside on an attached link. However, it has some first-hop security concerns. Router discovery and stateless address auto-configuration. IPv6 neighbor discovery uses ICMP-v6 messages and relies heavily on multicast, including Layer 2 multicast. The following figure illustrates the steps involved in deploying a router discovery attack. In this scenario, host A is attempting to discover routers in its link via router discovery. Step 1. It sends an ICMP-v6 router solicitation message requesting information for the routers in its local link. Step 2. A legitimate router, shown as R1, responds with an ICMP-v6 router advertisement for a lifetime X that lets host A know that it is the router in the link. In turn, host A installs a default route to its routing table that points to R1 for X time. If an intruder, shown as host T, manages to install itself in the link, it could attempt to insert itself as a default router in the routing table of host A. Step 3. To do that, host T can spoof a new router advertisement to host A from R1 and set the lifetime to 2 hours. If remaining lifetime is less than or equal to 2 hours, host A will ignore the prefix information option with regard to the valid lifetime, unless the router advertisement from which this option was obtained has been authenticated. Step 4. Host A will remove the installed default route that points to R1 after 2 hours. Step 5. Host T is then free to send another router advertisement, inserting itself as the default route for host A. Step 6. If host T succeeds in becoming the default route, it can see all traffic from host A that is using its default route, and may gain additional information or deploy other types of attacks, for example, a man-in-the-middle attack. IPv6 stateless address auto-configuration is a mechanism that enables an IPv6 endpoint to obtain an IPv6 address from the link it is coming to without requiring DHCPv6 address allocation. IPv6 address auto-configuration is stateless. Therefore, it does not require a mechanism to track the address allocations before it assigns a new address. The allocation occurs based on the IPv6 prefix information provided by ICMP-v6 router advertisements. The following figure illustrates the steps involved in deploying the IPv6 address auto-configuration attack. Step 1. When host A needs to receive an IPv6 address, it sends an ICMP-v6 router solicitation requesting the link information. Step 2. R1 responds with an ICMP-v6 router advertisement that provides the IPv6 address prefix shown as 2001-7052-600D:/64 on the link and a lifetime X for it. Step 3. Then host A can pick an address shown as 2001-7052-600D:/A on the link, and after it checks its availability using duplicate address detection, it can begin using it. Step 4. If malicious host T manages to insert itself in the link, it could spoof an ICMP-v6 router advertisement from R1 that sets the lifetime for the link to 2 hours. Step 5. That would cause the host A address to expire in 2 hours. Step 6. And host T could then send a new router advertisement with a new prefix, shown as 2001-7052-BAD:/64. Step 7. Upon seeing the new prefix, host A will pick a new address, shown as 2001-7052-BAD:/A. Step 8. Depending on the network configuration, the R1 ACLs may deny the new address from traversing the network. Therefore, host A could be blocked from accessing beyond the next hop router, or even its link local peers. If IPv6 address auto-configuration is used and first hop security protection is not employed, host T could potentially black hole hosts in its local link by spoofing 2 IPv6 router advertisements. Neighbor discovery is equivalent to router discovery, but for hosts. It performs operations such as address resolution, duplicate address detection (DAD), neighbor unreachability (NUD), and redirection. As with router discovery, in IPv6, there are also neighbor discovery ICMP-v6 messages that are responsible for network discovery. They are ICMP-v6 neighbor solicitation (NS) and neighbor advertisement (NA). The following 3 slides describe concerns related to neighbor discovery. Address resolution, duplicate address detection, and neighbor cache. Address resolution is the process that an endpoint, shown as host A, follows when it wants to forward a packet to another endpoint, shown as host B, in the local link, when it does not know its layer 2 address. Host A resolves the IP address of host B into a MAC address, and then forwards the packet by setting the host B MAC address as the layer 2 frame's destination MAC. In IPv4, Address Resolution Protocol, ARP, is responsible for address resolution. However, in IPv6, ICMP-v6 is responsible for that service. The following figure illustrates the steps involved in deploying an address resolution attack. Step 1. Host A sends an ICMP-v6 NS requesting the link layer address for host B. When host B sends an ICMP-v6 NA response, host A knows the MAC address that it will use to send the frame. At the same time, host A creates a neighbor cache entry for host B that binds the MAC for host B to its IPv6 address, similar to the ARP table in IPv4. If malicious host T manages to insert itself in the link, it could impersonate host B, and, in turn, intercept all packets that were originally destined for host B. Therefore, if proper first-hop security protections are not employed, host B can perform a man-in-the-middle attack or intercept traffic. Duplicate Address Detection (DAD) is a protocol in IPv6 that enables an endpoint to verify the uniqueness of an address. In essence, it is a probe message that the host sends to verify other hosts have not claimed the address. The following figure illustrates the steps involved in deploying a duplicate address attack. Step 1. In IPv6, when host A wants to perform a DAD, it sends an ICMP v6 NS for the address it wants to claim. For example, 2001-7052-600D:A. If other hosts do not respond with an ICMP NA stating the address has been taken, then host A is able to use the address. Step 2. In this scenario, DAD can be susceptible to attacks by malicious host T, which wants to prevent host A from receiving an IPv6 address. When host A sends its NS for 2001-7052-600D:A, host T can then send an NA stating that the address is taken. Step 3. If host A tries to claim another address, for example, 2001-7052-600D:AA, host T can send an NS and claim it. Essentially, host T can claim every address that host A tries to claim when performing DAD, and prevent host A from getting an IPv6 address to communicate with the network. When performing address resolution after receiving the ICMP v6 NA, host A creates a neighbor cache entry for the IP address it resolved to the host B MAC address. Given the size of the local link address pool, a host's neighbor cache can significantly increase in relation to the ARP table size in IPv4. In IPv6, the interface identifier of an address is 64 bits long, which means there could be as many as 2 to the power of 64 hosts on the link, and thus potentially 2 to the 64th power neighbor cache entries. The following figure illustrates the steps involved in deploying a neighbor cache attack. In this scenario, malicious host T can attack the neighbor cache of a host or routing device and attempt to fill it or cause a DOS condition. Let us assume that host T knows that R1 is connected to its link and to a link with the hosts in the 2001-7052-600D:64 prefix. Host T can start scanning 2001-7052-600D:64 by sending a packet to the hosts one by one. Regardless of whether the destination host is present on the link, R1 will attempt to resolve their IPv6 addresses to forward the frame that is destined to them. For example, even if host 2001-7052-600D:A is not on the link, while resolving it, R1 will create a cache entry that will be incomplete and remain in the R1 neighbor cache for a few seconds until it times out. Thus, if host T was fast enough and able to scan a large enough portion of the 2 to the 64 hosts within a few seconds, it could succeed at filling the R1 cache entry and cause a denial of service condition. DHCPv6 describes how a host that comes up can acquire an IPv6 address and other configuration options from a server that is available on its local link. DHCPv6 is described as a stateful protocol that has compatibility with stateless address auto-configuration as a design requirement. In other words, DHCPv6 can operate in a stateless fashion, where it provides configuration information to nodes and does not perform address assignments. In addition, it can operate in a stateful manner, where it assigns IPv6 addresses and configuration information to hosts that request it. As in IPv4 DHCP, DHCPv6 is susceptible to rogue server attacks. In other words, if DHCPv6 was used to provide IPv6 addresses to the other hosts, an attacker that managed to insert a rogue DHCPv6 server in the link could potentially assign addresses and configuration options to the link hosts as he wished. In turn, the attacker could deploy man-in-the-middle, traffic interception, or black hole traffic, similar to those in the stateless address auto-configuration scenario. In conclusion, security has become one of the most popular subjects of IPv6 discussions. In particular, IPv6 raises a number of first-hop security concerns that were not present in IPv4. Those concerns stem from the protocol's unique manner in which it performs router and neighbor discovery, address assignment, and address resolution. These mechanisms could allow an attacker to deploy attacks such as traffic interception, denial of service, or man-in-the-middle. Clearly, first-hop security should not be neglected, and appropriate protection mechanisms should be employed when possible. In IPv4, there are two basic types of ACLs, standard and extended. Basically, a standard ACL can permit or deny traffic based only on the source address. An extended ACL provides greater control and can permit or deny traffic based both on the source and destination addresses, as well as protocols and services, TCP, UDP port numbers. IPv6 supports only extended access lists. Another notable difference between IPv4 and IPv6 ACLs is the use of numbered access lists. IPv4 supports both named and numbered ACLs. IPv6 ACLs can only be defined by a unique name and do not support the use of numbered lists. An IPv4 ACL and an IPv6 ACL cannot share the same name. Another substantial difference from IPv4 is that, in IPv6 access control entries, ACEs, there is no wildcard masking. We can simply define our source and destination IPv6 subnet in classless interdomain routing notation. In this lesson, extended IPv6 access control lists are examined. In IPv4, there is an implicit deny IP any statement at the end of each access list. That is okay because ARP messages, which are equivalent to the IPv6 neighbor discovery process, are not sent over IPv4. However, IPv6 neighbor discovery messages do use the IPv6 network layer service and must be implicitly included in the IPv6 ACLs. Therefore, by default, IPv6 ACLs need to implicitly allow IPv6 neighbor discovery packets to be sent and received on an interface. This means that both ND neighbor advertisement and ND neighbor solicitation messages must be permitted on the link. IPv6 ACLs have a similar deny IPv6 any statement, but also include two other permit statements by default. Permit ICMP any ND NA and permit ICMP any ND NS. Configuring IPv6 ACLs is similar to configuring IPv4 ACLs. The following are the commands used to configure IPv6 ACLs. Defines an IPv6 access list and places the router in IPv6 access list configuration mode. Filters incoming or outgoing IPv6 traffic on an interface. The following interface configuration command is used. Filters incoming and outgoing connections to and from the router based on an IPv6 access list. The following line configuration command is used. Displays the content of all current IPv6 access lists. The following table shows a listing of the IPv6 ping test characters. This lesson has identified the IPv6 first hop security concerns associated with router discovery, neighbor discovery, and DHCPv6. Each concern has been summarized in a dedicated section where we have described each threat and provided figures to help illustrate the steps involved in an attack. This lesson also has explored IPv6 access control lists, with configuration examples in a lab exercise using the common topology.